All right, so we talked about simple factoring where the value in front of x squared was just 1. Now we're going to discuss what happens when we have a problem like this, 2x squared minus 7x minus 15. Now in order to solve this problem, you need to know how to do the AC method. So the first step in the AC method says to multiply a times c. So in this case, we multiply 2 times negative 15. Once you do that, you're going to find two numbers that multiply to get that number, AC, and add to get your middle term. You're going to replace the b term with those two factors, and then you're going to end up factor by grouping. So let's do this example using the AC method. So we have 2x squared minus 7x minus 15. If we multiply a times c, that gives us an AC of negative 30. Now we need to find two numbers that multiply to get negative 30, but add to get negative 7. So let's list our factors of 30. We have 1 and 30, 2 and 15, 3 and 10, and 5 and 6. Now remember though, this is negative, so we have to have a positive times a negative. So because of that, and because our middle term is negative, it's going to make that bigger number our negatives. So now we need to find which one of these adds to get negative 7. It's going to be 3 times negative 10. Now we replace our middle term with 3 and negative 10. So that's going to give us 2x squared plus 3x minus 10x minus 15. And now we're going to do what's called factoring by grouping. What that means is we're going to take our first two terms and we're going to pull out the greatest common factor. So if we look, the greatest common factor between these two terms is just x. So we pull an x out, and that's going to leave us with 2x plus 3. Now, we're going to do the same thing for negative 10x minus 15. One important thing to note here is if your first term is negative, you want to pull a negative out with your greatest common factor. So we know it's going to be 5, but we need to make it a negative 5 in this case. So we pull out a negative 5, and that's going to leave us with 2x plus 3. At this point, your parentheses should match. If they do not match, you've probably done something wrong. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take these first two terms and we're going to put those together. And then we're just going to bring this one down, 2x plus 3. And that's our final answer. These last two problems are going to deal with the difference of two squares. So remember that the difference of two squares says if you have a squared minus b squared, that's going to factor down to a plus b times a minus b. A big indicator of this is you notice that these only have two terms. Right? So they only have two terms. Now the first thing we want to do is we want to see if there's a greatest common factor. In this case there's not, so we need to figure out what our a value is and what our b value is. And to do that we need to take the square root. So if we take the square root of 16y squared, that's going to be 4y. And that's our a value. If we take the square root of 1, we're not really worried about the negative in this case. We just take the square root of 1, that's going to be 1. And so now we're going to rewrite this as a plus b times a minus b. So that's going to give us 4y plus 1 and 4y minus 1. And that's our final answer. For the last example, when we look at this, the first thing that we should notice is that we need to pull a greatest common factor out. So if we look at 3b cubed minus 3b, our greatest common factor is 3b. So that's going to leave us with b squared right here, and just like we mentioned in the last video, we need to put a placeholder here, so we need to put a minus 1. Alright, so now we have 3b times b squared minus 1. We can still simplify this part of the problem. This is the difference of two squares. Our a value would be the square root of b squared, which is just b, and our b value is the square root of 1, which is just 1. And so now we're going to combine all those, but we can't forget about our 3b in the front. Let's give us b plus 1, b minus 1. And so our final answer is 3b times b plus 1 times b minus 1. All right, y'all have a good day.